All right, welcome to AI Innovation in Ethics. This is Reggie Johnson from Fort Worth, Texas.
And I am Wayne Denner, and we have no PR Smith today, Reggie.
No PR Smith. Where is Paul? Paul is in where is he
Sunny,
at?
he is in sunny Cyprus at a wedding, I believe. But thankfully, it's very sunny here in Ireland. I don't know what it's like with you, Reggie.
I don't know. It's morning, so it's still kind of darkish out, but I think it's supposed to be sunny today too, but not as beachy as Cyprus. I bet that's going to be a beautiful spot for a wedding. So his son getting married.
It is a sun. Yeah, it's absolutely lovely country and a fantastic place to have a wedding. I'm so jealous. I would love to be in sunny Cyprus today. So we do hope that Paul is having a fantastic time, and we're looking forward, of course, to having him back here on the show very soon. So what's coming up today, Reggie, in the show?
Well, let's talk about that. First off, we do want to send our well wishes to the young couple at the wedding Paul is at. We wish them the very best. Yeah, a love is so special. Um,
And when we're before we do that, why don't we play a little bit of our Parts and Spurs music for the happy couple getting married today in Cyprus? So let's do that.
She's going through her life. The time to say she's crazy. She's wasted all her time. But the walls are getting closer. The space up in the light. She can hear the traffic hang around. Where the lovers came round earlier tonight.
And that is the fantastic Parts and Spurs. And of course, Reggie, as always, we will play that track out in its full entirety at the end of the show. But let's get right down to business. What have we got coming up today, Reggie?
so, is the European Union reducing its regulations and safeguards around AI? A compelling piece by Luisa Jarowski, someone we often cite on this show. Some things parents might wish. Well, let me give you the correct order. First off, the Society of Authors in the UK protests Meta's idea of fair use. Three things parents wish they'd considered before giving their kids a smartphone. Wayne's going to talk to us a little bit about that. This has kind of been an ongoing thing we've talked about, a big issue right now. Also, some lead generation AI tools. We're going to talk about some of those. Paul gave us an overview of one or two of them over the last couple of weeks, so we've got some more to talk about. And can AI give you helpful insights about yourself? Can it be that friend that will be honest with you, give you that honest look in the mirror? And also, retracted papers still appearing in AI tools, cancer imaging. Interesting story there. And we're also just briefly mentioned the citations issue with the news as well. Then, if we have time, we'll also get into Coca-Cola saving 90% with their Christmas ads by making them AI generated, and also three things that make Coke the best at marketing, because Coke is Coke. And that's pretty much all you need to say, and people know what you mean when it comes to the marketing world. So first off, starting with the European Union, reducing regulations and safeguards. So Luisa Jarowski, in her Luisa's newsletter, an expert on AI privacy and legal. So I have a question for you, Wayne. What's more important, being the dominant player in AI or being responsible with AI?
Well, for me, Reggie, you know, it's being the responsible player in AI. It's so important that we're responsible when we're rolling out any new technology and we have safeguards in place to keep people safe.
And that's kind of my thinking too. But a lot of countries right now are being faced with this question around the world as to whether to, where proper safety and privacy regulations for big tech are being pitted against a nation's competitiveness in AI overall. So right now in the EU, the threat is that in an effort to win the AI dominance race, could it be throwing away its massive lead in AI governance, user privacy and safety, and consumer rights and advocacy? I think we've all recognized that the EU is a little bit ahead of the game when it comes to those areas. but it seems prepared to shift methods a little bit. So being placed in this situation, Europe's said it's going to simplify the GDPR. You're familiar with the General Data Protection Regulation. Its most prominent data protection law, and most people have heard of GDPR. It's proposing to simplify it, and we don't have details about exactly that'll be, but its goals are to simplify existing rules to reduce the time and effort companies spend complying with EU laws, with a focus on small and medium businesses, and to increase EU competitiveness, especially in light of the AI race. So there are, it's kind of also changing its tune, it's changing its narrative. Prominent players in the EU are talking a little bit differently around regulation right now. Two important things that Louisa points out, Ms. Jarofsky, that have happened that kind of have led to this. One is the Draghi report. Mario Draghi, former European Central Bank president, the EU asked him to prepare a report on his personal vision on what the future of European competitiveness was. And he had some interesting quotes. He said that while the ambitions of the EU's GDPR and AI Act are commendable, their complexity and risk of overlaps and inconsistencies can undermine developments in the field of AI by EU industry actors. And he also talks about the differences in member states and how they implement them. And he says areas of potential inconsistency with the provisions of the AI Act create risk of European companies being excluded from early AI innovation because of uncertainty of regulatory frameworks, as well as higher burdens for EU researchers and innovators to develop homegrown AI. So, right now, they're calling this a winner takes most dynamic. And EU is now feeling like they're in this unavoidable trade-off between being one of the last to get to the party of AI innovation versus being one of the strongest when it comes to safety. And again, Mr. Draghi also says that stronger ex ante, that's based on forecasts rather than actual results, regulatory safeguards for fundamental rights and product safety versus more regulatory light-handed rules to promote EU investment and innovation. So he talks about developing simplified rules, removing regulatory overlaps. And I think that this goes along with a growing dissatisfaction amongst AI companies that over the EU rules. We heard Sam Altman in Berlin, that pregnant pause piece we talked about, where there was a little bit of cynicism as to whether they'd follow the rules, and he said that they would comply, but it's clear they're not happy. He says, we think lots of Europeans want AI, and essentially they want it without all this red tape. And also the vice president made a comment saying that the Trump administration is troubled by reports that some foreign governments are considering tightening the screws on U.S. tech companies with international footprints. Get this. Now, America cannot and will not accept that. That's interesting coming from the vice president saying, we won't accept your government having regulations on our companies that are in your country. And then this was at the AI summit. There were some comments also from several EU leaders about how we want Europe to be one of the leading AI continents. France is going to accelerate, and we're announcing tomorrow this summit an investment in AI. And, we want to apply our regulations and rules in a business-friendly way. Now, I don't know how it is in Europe, but in the U.S., you talking about one state being more business-friendly than another generally means fewer regulations. So on the same day the AI summit ended, the EU announced the withdrawal of the EU liability directive. Are you familiar with the liability directive, Wayne?
Not professionally, no.
So what that was is it basically aimed to improve the functioning of internal market for laying down uniform rules for certain aspects of non-contractual civil liability for damage caused with the involvement of AI systems. Sounds like it was a way to help hold them accountable for damage caused by AI systems. So they said they'd do that, they withdrew that, and then they said they're going to simplify GDPR. So what Louisa Jarofsky takes away, she says the EU has bent to economic and political external pressure, and its narrative and tone have definitely changed. The chosen way to relieve the pressure is to simplify the GDPR. From a legal perspective, it's unclear what's coming, but I think that it's clear from the context of the narrative what's going on here. At least it seems very possible. Any thoughts on that potential change in the EU?
It's going to be very interesting to watch, Reggie. And I know that we have this race now for dominance taking place when it comes to AI in particular, where various countries around the world are trying to roll out their tech as quickly as they possibly can. But going back to that earlier point, it's so important that we think about the impact that that technology is going to have in our wider society. And we start to think about the ripples and the particular demographics of people that might interfere with or impact. And I think that's going to be really important. There's no doubt that we are going to need to have some form of unilateral guidelines when it comes to AI. So the countries have steps in place to keep their citizens safe, but also that we don't stifle the growth of the technology. We have to find that almost that sweet spot. And if we think of what happened before AI in the world of social media, we're only starting to really truly understand, Reggie, some of the harms now that have been developing over the past sort of 10 to 15 years. So I think it's going to be a very interesting one to watch over the next couple of weeks.
Really good point, Wayne. Paul likes to say that discussions of AI always come back to philosophy. And I think this is also true because I think those of you familiar with game theory will recognize that this is a situation trying to get unilateral agreement across nations that's ripe for experts in game theory. Anyway, won't go into that any further, but I will mention that the Society of Authors in the UK had a protest at the London Meta headquarters. They were going to hand deliver a letter saying they were unhappy to have their copyrighted works taken by Mark Zuckerberg, by Meta. Meta locked their doors. They had their doors locked, so they couldn't go in and deliver their letter. They tried to hand it to employees that walked in, but they wouldn't accept it either. So they eventually taped it, I think, to the offices. So they delivered their letter, but they had some interesting quotes came out of this. It was an interesting, there were about 150 of them there, but I think one quote from one attendee said, "The government does not have the right," this is talking about the UK government and its recent direction it's going with copyright law, right? He says, "The government does not have the right to give away my copyright. Mark Zuckerberg does not have the right to take away my property." This is as reported in The Bookseller by Isabel Dempsey, by the way. Another interesting part is the interpretation of fair use in the UK, and fair use being the legal defense du jour right now for AI scraping and training. It differs in the UK compared to the United States. I wasn't quite as familiar with how that was, but I learned a little bit more about it. I'm obviously not an expert on it, but one writer explained the concept of fair use in the UK is to protect up to 10% of the work. So he says, ingesting an entire book is clearly not fair use. He compares it to going into a shop, stealing a bike and claiming I'm only using 10% of this tire, so it's not really theft. If they're stealing the other 90%, then it's still theft. So for me, it'll be interesting to see how the fair use argument in court plays out differentially between the United States and Europe, because in the US, it's a little different than that. And this is just one writer's summary of the UK interpretation of fair use. But obviously, different legal histories. We'll see. And in the US, we're seeing efforts to even skirt around fair use laws by having the government rewrite the meaning of fair use to allow for scraping. So that could make the whole point moot in the United States. So moving on to this important topic, 3 things parents wish they had thought about and considered when giving teens a smartphone. You just mentioned a minute ago about some of the harms we're seeing from social media. Why don't you talk to us about this, Wayne?
Yeah, really interesting one, Reggie. And as you know, I do a lot of work with parents. I do a lot of work with young people in schools. And the big topic always comes up. Parents will ask me the question, I'm thinking about getting my son or daughter a smartphone. What is the right age? And in reality, Reggie, there's really no right age. It really boils down to the age of your young person versus their readiness to get access to that piece of technology. And as we know, we're 10, 15 years down the line now, maybe even longer, where smartphones have been around, they've been kicking around. And we started to see the impact that smartphones in themselves have had in our society, among our relationships with people, how we're accessing technology, how we're accessing content, how we're interaction with each other. So it's not just the phone, I always say to parents. It's much more than just the phone. It's access to the internet, and it's unfeathered or untethered access, whatever way you want to look at it, to content. And it's really getting parents to start to think about, once they introduce that smartphone to their young person, they're effectively giving their son or daughter access to the internet and all that comes with that. So what I tend to say to parents is, it's really, really important to take a step back. Think about how you're going to introduce the technology. You probably already have some technology in your home, and how is that technology managed? So the setup and the management of the device is very, very important. Making sure that the device is set up correctly before you give the young person the device. So having things like your parental controls in place is going to be really important. If it's an Android device, making sure that you have the Google Family Link set up. Or if it's an iPhone, you're availing of Apple's screen time tools, so that gives you some visibility into your child's digital world. And I think that's really, really important. So these are things that parents do need to consider before they give the young person that particular phone. And I always talk to parents about the ABCs of online safety. So A stands for managing access, B stands for setting boundaries, and C stands for having conversations. And those three things are so, so important that all parents do, particularly when they're looking to introduce smartphones or other forms of technology that connect to the internet. I suppose the outlining factor of all of this then is, I suppose, a little link to what we were talking about a couple of moments ago, but the impact of harmful algorithms in particular, and the content that's being pushed by social media platforms towards users. And that can have a harmful impact on children and young people, particularly in their development. I talk a lot about filter bubbles, and how many of us can get trapped up in and on these filter bubbles across the internet on platforms like TikTok, Instagram, and Snapchat. And again, harmful, in some cases, content then is fed and pushed towards us as consumers of content. And if we're not careful, that can polarize certain views that we might have, that can give us warped perceptions on things that are going on in our society and indeed across the world. And that's something that parents do need to be mindful of and also do need to factor in. So those three things, it's age versus readiness. It's not just the phone, it's the internet. And then it's really thinking about how you're going to filter that content and how you're going to make sure that the content that your young person is being exposed to or seeing on the internet and social media is appropriate for their age. And that's something that parents do need to consider.
That's great advice there. I wanted to ask, do you advocate for a tiered approach where maybe you want to be able to get a hold of your kids, so you give them a phone, but maybe you restrict their downloading of social media apps until they're a little bit older. So at an age where maybe they're ready to be able to text or at least call, you give them a phone, but not yet social media?
Yep. And again, parents can introduce, basic phones that allow a young person to make a call or send a text message so that they can keep in touch with mom and dad. Once we take that into secondary school, then we kind of open the doors then to the world of the internet and social media. And things like having that ask to buy turned on is really important, so that you get a notification if your young person is trying to download a particular app, and you can go away and you can take a look at that app. And it's never for me as a parent, no, you can't get onto that app. It's, let me have a little bit of time to take a look at this app and see if it's suitable and see if it's appropriate. And then make sure I, as a parent, avail of any parental controls that the provider may have in place in order to keep my young person safe. And that's really, really important that parents think about that approach.
That gives us all a lot to think about. I know as someone with two kids, one who already has a phone because she's 16, she probably got a phone a little younger than I might consider giving it to my second child, who's now 12. But a lot of that was from necessity. But I think that having learned what I've learned in the last 4 years, I might approach it differently. But of course, each kid is individual too, and my son is different than my daughter, and so some of that is based on just who they are as people. Like you said, it's more about when they're ready, and that comes from knowing your kid, having conversations with them, and nobody knows your kid like you do, right?
Absolutely, Reggie. So important. And thinking about your child's maturity and how they're going to be able to handle the technology. Listen, some kids can handle technology better than others, and that's just a fact. And it's about parents making that informed decision, but also having all of the best advice to hand and guidance in terms of what's going to work best for their family. So it's very much a different approach for different families, but really having those ABCs in place, managing the access, setting the boundaries, and having the conversations is a good way to move forward.
Awesome. The ABCs, things to think about, and that some parents are wishing they had thought about before giving their kids phones. So let's move on. Time is ebbing away as always, and we like to end on time. As you know, we still got about 10 minutes. So talking about some AI agents for lead generation. So this was something that was in the Future Ready Digest, cited from, I think Dr. Jim Hamill shared this list, and we had a few that Paul talked about. I was going to talk about a couple of them, especially for their differences in how they illustrate what AI is good at. One is called OpenChord AI, and it's an automated AI commenting and replying agent for platforms like Twitter and Reddit. It's keyword based, it's relevant, it sounds human. So if you see people talking about, say you make a tool for photo storage, that's probably an outdated thing to say you make a tool for, but whatever, photo storage, and you can say, you can put in your keyword terms and it'll go on Twitter, you connect it to your account, and it'll look for people that are talking about, I need a photo storage solution. And it will comment and say, I found a photo storage solution that works great, and you can try it for free at this link. It seemed to work really great from the videos that I looked at. The interesting thing, though, is that a lot of people are very averse to getting, number one, bots commenting and pretending to be people on posts, and secondly, anything salesy in the comments. And I just wonder if this is not what AI does best, is impersonating people. At least that's my personal opinion. Don't get me wrong, the app looks great, and you know what? It probably works. Maybe it works fine, and if it works, then that's great. If it works for your business, it's, like I said, it seems to be very good at what it does, and I think it can work on different platforms like Reddit and Facebook and LinkedIn. And to be able to at scale find leads by looking at what's by having a tool that can pull together all the different posts that mention looking for a certain solution and then provide that solution. Now that's really valuable in context. You just got to find that balance between being salesy or being spammy. So you've got to gauge your customer's attitude towards this kind of communication and what you'll be doing. And my gut suggestion would be to test pilot it maybe on a smaller group and as like one specific geographic area and kind of see what kind of response you get, because customers of different products have different psychographics and all of these things. And if you get good responses and people appreciate the solutions, then maybe expand, but maybe test pilot on a small group. So that's one approach. Now here's kind of a different way of using AI. Dydas AI agent, I apologize if I'm not pronouncing that correctly, DYDAS AI agent. It's a team of agents, and they're all based on different platforms. They can scrape different platforms for potential leads for you with rich contextual data. So you can ask in natural language, like, get me all the marketing agencies in Miami using Google business profiles or Google Maps, and it'll pull a big list. Nice, it'll assimilate data. I think this is something AI is very good at, is assimilating and organizing data. So organizing these potential leads and their context information so that you can see who to reach out to if you've got a marketing related tool that you want to talk to them about. And that can be really powerful rather than manually searching and going through each one and making your own list, but it can pull it all together in a format for you. And it can do it on a lot of different platforms. It can generate copy and analysis. It can search and scrape the web. It can find and qualify leads. So more contextual information than just here's the name of the company. It can, and then also gathering the latest trends. You can go onto Google Trends and have it give you ideas for, I think for content. And then also says it can write SEO articles and generate images. So there's a lot that it can do. I do think that organizing and assimilating information is a valuable thing that AI does. Anything that feels like a tedious task, a mundane task, is something AI is very good at. Those are the two I'll mention for now. There was another one that I also looked into. We can maybe talk about that next week, but there's a number of good ones for lead generation. Yeah, Wayne, go ahead.
Can I just jump in, Reggie, and say, do you know what's really important about what you've just mentioned? The test piloting of these particular tools. I think that's so, so important. I think if you're a small business, you're a medium business, where you don't have a lot of time, tools like this could make a fantastic difference in your business if you can get them working right. And that I've always found with a lot of this stuff, that is the challenge. You really got to be, very, very switched on and make sure that you really, really do test pilot this stuff before you roll it out at a larger scale, because it can absolutely go up the left if you don't get it right. But I have seen some really, really interesting uses, but I've had to make sure that I really, really, really fine tune it to the point that I'm getting the best out of the tool almost, because if I don't, then I run the risk that it's going to actually do more harm than good.
Excellent point. Excellent point. You don't want to do more harm than good. Just a couple more things as we get close to wrapping up. One is AI knows me and can help me. So this was originally in a James Bishop post on LinkedIn, and it was interesting because it talked about a prompt to use with AI. And we talked about this last week, and I'm curious to see if anybody has tried this. If you've tried this, please let us know in the comments and what your overall impression was. But basically you say, based on what you already know about me, play the role of a close friend who cares deeply about me, but is comfortable being absolutely transparent and direct with me. Based on our interactions, tell me 10 things I need to hear that will help me in the long run. And it's interesting. Paul gave us a little bit of info about what his responses were. I'm not going to tell what Paul said. I'll let him tell that next week. But a number of people have tried this and they found that it's quite insightful. I found that it was quite insightful. Now, the one question I have is how much of it that I felt like was insightful of my behavior was more of the generalities you see in horoscopes that can apply to most people. Like if you say you like being around people, but you also need your time alone, that's kind of true of everybody to some extent, or most people. I don't know how much of it was that kind of generalities versus actually really had picked up information from me using it. But it did feel like there were a lot of insights from what I felt like were, a relatively brief amount of interactions, compared to what its insights were. So, and if nothing else, it's also very motivational. So it's an interesting thing. And then Paul also recommended, I think this is a great idea, is after you get your list of responses, you ask it, where did you get that information from? Now, here's the thing that he said is that the AI told him, ChatGPT told him, it did not draw any data from his blog, from LinkedIn, from Facebook, from anything like that. It got it all from his interactions with the chatbot. So now that's an interesting thing. So try it. Based on what you know about me, play the role of a close friend and be completely honest with me. What are 10 things I need to know? And we'll get Paul to tell you what it told him. I will just mention quickly retracted papers. So a study was done, and the good news is AI can help doctors read cancer imaging and disseminate scientific information. The bad news is that research papers which have been retracted are still included by the LLMs as legitimate sources. So I think that the one really particularly chilling quote from the paper is, we hypothesize that AI may not tell the difference between retracted literature and non-retracted publications on the imaging of cancer in a timely manner. My thinking is, so obviously when a scientific paper comes out, there's an increase in retracted papers right now. There's pressure for professors in colleges to publish. There's pressure for them to get their name out there. And that's led to fraudulent paper mills. And that's led to a number of different things, also AI generated papers, but fraudulent data in order just to get published or perish, right? So there's an increase in that, which means this could be an increasing problem right now. But and then when it comes out from peer review or from later on scrutiny, which is now they're more scrutinizable because of the internet, a journal will retract the paper if they find out it was not legitimate. And that means what was in it might not be factual. And so if a doctor is relying on AI to help with cancer imaging and it relies on knowledge from a paper which has since been retracted for using fraudulent data, that could be bad. But this should be doable. I mean, the AI, I don't know if you've ever seen some of these lists of individuals that ChatGPT will not talk about, certain names that are in legal proceedings with them. If you put in these specific names, it'll say, sorry, I can't answer that. It's clearly been told if someone brings up this name, you cannot answer. So I don't know why it can't have a better safeguard for if the paper is retracted, because in all the cases in this study, they were clearly marked as retracted on the publisher's page. I think all but one. And they said there's still a 10% chance with any paper that ChatGPT will still answer questions based on the retracted articles and not notice the retraction status of the article. So that's something that they should be able to fact check, I would think, as part of it. So as we also have seen, citation issues with news have been an issue in the past. Won't go into that, but we remember how they have problems getting their attributions right about that. And we'll talk about another legal faux pas in Coca-Cola next week. I do want to wrap up on time. I am cognizant of time. It's 7:30 in Fort Worth. It's 1:30 in the UK, and it is, I think, 3:30 in Cairo. So why don't we go ahead and wrap up for today? I hate to call it a day with some of the topics. Wayne, any last thoughts?
Reggie, as always, it's been a fantastic, fantastic show. And everything that we've covered on the show today, all topics discussed are going to be available, as always, on prsmith.org/AI-topics. So Paul will have a full breakdown on everything we have touched on today and talked about. And I know, Reggie, you keep your finger very much on the pulse in what's happening. And we're going to be picking up some fantastic topics on the show over the next couple of weeks. And as always, Reggie, it's been a blast. We've had a real hoot today. We've covered some really interesting things. And don't forget, if there's something that you'd like us to cover on the show, please do reach out. Connect with us on LinkedIn. We'd love to connect. And we're going to leave, as we always do, with a fantastic play out from one thing, Reggie. Yep.
One quick note. Next week, we are off. So it'll be the week after, 2 weeks, because next week is a holiday. So next Friday, no chat. But 2 weeks from today will be our next chat. And Paul will be back.
Paul will be back in the hot seat. Paul's enjoying himself in sunny Cyprus today for a lovely wedding. So a big hello to Paul, and also a big hello to Dr. Sarah in Egypt, who popped in to say hello to us. Thanks for joining us today on the stream, Sarah. We hopefully will see you back here very soon. And once again, Reggie, have a great weekend in Fort Worth, a great Friday, and thank you for joining me on the show today.
Thanks, Wayne.
Mother's in the basement. She's gone.